The content of equality and tolerance would have been very different in the 1700s than it is for us today. But the concept is still fairly important. I don't think that you would have seen the philosophers, the Enlightenment thinkers talking about the freedom or equality and tolerance with respect to, say, homosexuality. But that is definitely what we're talking about today because a lot of the other things have sort of been discussed already. I don't know if I'm saying that exactly right. But it's still this idea of who is equal. Equals are, so here's a key idea about equality. Equals are equal, which then raises the question of who is equal. And we just saw in the earlier part, like for example, men and women. Are men and women equal? No. Again, 1700s, not me. I'm on board. But 1700s, right? Men and women aren't equal because men use their reason and women don't. If women use their reason, they would be equal. Okay, that's great. So equality is equals are equal. What one of the hopes of the Enlightenment is not that we're stuck in this position where men are superior to women and the races are one race is superior to other races. That's not the hope of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment would say that's where we are today. But if I show my arrow again, if you look at my arrow, hold on, here's my arrow, that's where we are today. But somewhere down the road, when we finally reach enlightenment, that won't be the case. So equality is really, if we're going to use Condorcet's words, our hopes for the future condition, not today, but the future condition of the human race can be subsumed under three important ideas. Number one, the abolition of inequality between nations. Now here, he would be talking as much between as race as nation, sort of that nationality idea. But just that, if again, the 1700s looks to Africa, they would say, man, they're living in tribes, they are ignorant, superstition, blah, blah, blah. But someday they won't be. Someday they will be using their reason just like us. The progress of equality within each nation, so inside of each nation. So this would include things like, say, for example, men and women or classes, things like that. And then, of course, the true perfection of mankind, that we're all here. Now, clearly at the time he's saying mankind, but that's not the intent. In 1700, yes, mankind. But the idea being that someday what we mean all humankind, not just mankind. So it's in this sense, the Enlightenment, the way it sort of talks about things, is very sort of, I don't know what the word is, progressive is, again, a very bad word for that. But it's definitely trying to envision a future in which racism is not a thing, sexism is not a thing. But in the meantime, it uses racism and sexism to try to achieve that goal. So it's a little messy at this point, but you get the idea. And as we move towards today where we say equals, okay, so equals are equal. And then what would we say today? Who's equal? The answer is we believe today everyone's equal. And so that's sort of the way this sort of goes. So if we continue with equality, all humans possess reason, so they are equal. Now what we know, of course, in the 1700s is all humans, instead of possess reason, all humans who access, maybe is a better way, who access reason, well, I'm not saying this is exactly right, but all humans possess reason, so they're equal. But not all humans access reason, so they're not equal. That's going to be sort of the way to think about that. So we would talk about things politically like equality before the law, or political equality, one person, one vote. Even though Bill Gates has way more money than me, we both get the same vote. Individual liberty or liberalism, the ability to choose your own good life. That if you really have access to your reason, then no one else should tell you what's good for you. You have access to your reason, and if you're accessing it, you should be able to make your own good choices. So if you decide that you want to become, a doctor, fantastic. That is your choice for your own good life. No one comes and says, you've got to be a lawyer. Sorry. And that's sort of the whole idea. But it very much hinges on the ability of, not humans have reason, but it hinges on the ability of humans to actually access their reason. So a huge question becomes, Where does this end and the rights of the community begin, right? There's going to be some problems with this whole thing. If everybody's choosing their own good life, like it's going to be a hot mess out there. Everybody recognizes this. One of the things that's going to happen very quickly as a result of this, you're going to get the French Revolution, but you're going to get this thing called nationalism that's going to help try to tie all these individuals together into a team. But this becomes the question of like, where does my choice for my own good life end and the rights of the community begin? So for example, if I chose to become a nudist, is that cool? Can I just walk around nude? Answer, that's not cool, right? So can, for example, a society prohibit theft? What if my choice for my own good life is to go take your stuff? Is that okay? No. What about adultery? Is that cool? Can I do adultery? I mean, it's not just like we might have a good conversation about this. If you allow people to take other people's stuff, you can't really have a society, and so that's not reasonable. That doesn't make sense. On the flip side, what about adultery? Can we sort of have adultery? Can the government say, if you do adultery, we will stone you or we will put you in jail? What about dancing? Like, these are all sort of questions like, where can the government, the society get involved, and where should it stay out of it? What if you don't use your reason? What then? In other words, can we say, for example, well, it's okay for guys to do adultery, but it's not okay for women to do adultery? Because women don't have access to their reason, and so they won't be making the choice based on reason. They'll be making the choice based on emotion or passions. So you understand how these things can get very sort of messy in the whole mix-up. By the way, that's not what I think about women. There you go. It's really hard to sort of play this out with just a voice hanging out here. All right, and that's going to then lead to this idea of tolerance. So, I'm sorry, I should really explain this better. If I get to choose my own good life, and we're all living together choosing our own good life, then we have to be pretty tolerant. Like, I have to let you do your thing, and you have to let me do my thing. Because I have use of reason, and you equally have use of reason. So if you're doing your thing, then, and I'm doing my thing, you have to let me do my thing because I'm using my reason. I don't know if I'm saying that exactly right. All ways of life, all perspectives have value because they're all individuals using their reason. Using reason, I should choose my own good life, which then means that's true of someone living in Bangladesh. That's true of somebody living in rural Japan. That's true of somebody living, in northern Finland. Different perspectives are going to increase the knowledge of the world. What we mean by this is, here's a person in this culture making this particular choice, using their reason. That tells me something about human beings. It tells me something about reason. It'd be very easy for me to say that's not reasonable and therefore it's not okay. And we will do that every once in a while. For example, we'll say, well, in this culture, there's this person who decides it's okay to beat his wife. And he says that helps her to grow and to change. And we would say, that's not using your reason. That's not cool at all. But there are going to be a lot of things that are they're not wrong. They're different ways of doing things. And part of sort of what it means to be human is to understand all those different ways of doing things. These different perspectives, this becomes a huge part of, for example, the humanities. Reading a book written by someone living in Japan in the 1800s tells me something about human beings using their reason in this very different circumstance, which tells me something about human beings, which tells me something about me. Warning, this tolerance is limited. No toleration of those who act contrary to reason. That's going to be a very big part of this. So, for example, at least today, we tend to tolerate just about everything. The one thing we don't tolerate is intolerance, which seems super, oxymoronic, but that's sort of the way that goes. We're intolerant of intolerance, but we're tolerant of everything else. 18th century, this also then gets wrapped up in nationalism, as I talked about. We have to they start to get these movements to start to tie all these individuals together, to start to think of you guys as a team, and that's nationalism. and that's going to get tied up, and their toleration of others is okay, but ours is, our way of doing things is the best. Like, I tolerate what you guys are doing over there. I tolerate what you guys are doing over there. But man, we're doing it the best. There's a lot of ways to do it. We're doing it the best way. And of course, that then can very quickly get wrapped up into things like others' viewpoints start to get ranked, depending on how close they are to the correct viewpoint. That means ours. And that can lead to sort of, again, racism sort of by the back door, or sexism by the back door, or classism by the back door, essentially, where we start to, just nationalism by that sort of back door. All right, I hope this is making sense. I'm going to have you guys watch a video, very clear. I just want to be clear right now, this next video, you're only going to watch from minute 4 to minute 10:56.